she had another breakdown and was forced by her brother to undergo shock treatment, and they kind of tried to start over after that. So it's 1942, and he's anticipating being called up in the draft, and they live in Sonoma. That's probably all you need to know. Their neighbor a few doors down had told Dorian about a farmer who had fresh eggs for sale, and Dorian had driven off hours ago with Anna's directions scribbled into her catch-all notebook. The notebook held diagrams of the route to the market, to the school if she came to pick him up at the end of the day, to the post office, randomly mixed in with grocery lists and the titles of books she read and other reminders. As promised, in the months since her shock treatment, she recovered the skipped-out bits of memory, but not her confidence in the act itself. If she was lost on some back road, she would have to pull over and wait for Ellis to come looking. Ellis thought he might catch Anna at home on a Saturday afternoon. When he got to the house, her husband, Brady, was raking weeds in the front yard, and he called Anna from the basement, where she was wringing the day's wash. She came out into the light, shielding her eyes, her arms slickly wet and her dress patched with damp spots. After she gave Ellis directions to the farm, at least 3 or 4 miles from town, too far to walk, Rudy set his rake against the house and said he was about to go out anyway. Not 3 or 4 miles to drive, but more, going back and forth on a grid of rural roads till he found her. And these days, gasoline was a scarce as well as a precious commodity. I'll give her another half hour, Ellis said. Rudy had already fished from his pocket the keys to his truck. He grinned and shook his head. Well, Professor, I suppose it wouldn't help her none if you got her a compass to keep in the car. Whenever Rudy called Ellis Professor, it made him think of the way people here used to call him the Mister, a wariness to it. But let's just wait and see. Country customs were familiar to Ellis, but not the generosity of Rudy's offhandedness about Dorian's habit of getting lost. That had been the deficit in Ellis's childhood on the farm. Not going without new shoes or wishing for a penny for candy, but scraping by when it came to such impulses, the best his parents could do. On the way out to the farm, Rudy, who worked in the vineyards, shared the news that Edgar Winston, just around the block from them, had been drafted, as Ellis would be sooner or later, and folks were stopping in on his wife now and then to chop a cord of wood or mow the lawn. And if Ellis couldn't insult Rudy by offering money for gasoline, there was a net of obligations to which he was now newly privy. Last summer was the first one Ellis had spent with his wife, no longer a husband who showed only on the weekend, but that didn't count. She'd just finished the shock treatment. Each day had erased itself. When his college classes began in the fall, he reverted to being a weekend visitor, staying for longer but leaving Dorian alone for 3 nights because they needed his salary. But it wasn't enough to count on Georgia to come in the afternoon and this neighbor or that one to look in on her. Dorian hadn't wanted him to quit his job, and he felt relieved. For once, he'd matched his wife, all in or nothing. He'd make sure to stop by to chop wood for Mrs. Edgar Winston. When they were within a quarter of a mile of the farm, Rudy began crisscrossing back roads. He said his Anna had started a vegetable garden like Dorian's, which made sense now there was rationing. But if you said that to Anna, she'd get as stewed as a fresh-boiled owl. She wasn't doing it to be practical. She was doing it for the war effort. People lived by slogans now, warnings and admonitions posted everywhere. Are you helping? Turn your dollars into tanks now. If you've news of our position, keep it dark. Slogans that had buoyed Dorian, too, until this last bout of depression. Ellis shouldn't have let her go off alone, but to anticipate was to impart a curse. When they spotted the car at the side of the road, Rudy was once again the soul of discretion, slowing to a stop only long enough for Ellis to hop out before he pulled away. The car looked empty, but Ellis went to peer in its windows anyway. Dorian was asleep on the back seat. To keep warm, she pulled on a ragged pullover he'd left in the car. When he opened the door, she stirred lazily, and then she swam up from blurriness to a raking sharpness. Why do I have to wait hours and hours before you even think? Why do I have to try and try when you never? Why do I have to? He offered a hand to help her out, but she backed against the other door and drew up her knees. She'd set off this morning with her hair clipped back from her face, but loose strands had scrolled over her shoulders. I'm sorry, he said. You're sorry, she said. Your all-purpose answer to everything. Careless to give in when she insisted she'd find this place on her own, but careless was what was demanded. It went worse for her if he stood by wringing his hands. I'll bet that farm isn't far from here, he said. I need to go home and lie down. On better days, she'd drive back, rehearsing the route for next time, but cross out better, worse. Cross out, hoping, dreading, flinching. Come sit up front with me, he said. He had to wait, crouched in the space between the open door and the car, his waiting of pressure steadily applied to her waiting, which seemed so slack but wasn't. When Dorian scrambled out of the back seat, he steered her around to the other side of the car and opened the front door for her, his hand on her back. All this pussyfooting around, she said. It would be more efficient to just yank me by the hair. Ellis smiled. Then she got into the car and slammed the door. He pulled onto the road, thinking about Mrs. Edgar and Hannah and Lonnie in his senior class, thinking about sooner or later, for which his wife would not hesitate to blame him. He'd moved up just barely in time to have to leave her. Their first summer together didn't count because then the question of survival had been immediate. While she was in the hospital where there was no knife sharp enough to do the job, she tried to open the veins of her wrists. Nothing fierce stirred in her that summer. Every day her, why do I have to? And he'd known how to fill in the blank. But he didn't have the right to, only she did. That closely held right of refusal, her one condition for coming back to him. He could not love her simply because she'd suffered. Every small pleasure since then, every moment of ease, had eroded the absolute, the heroic terms. He just wished they had more days of their own devising to shore them up against the facts. Her brother remained her guardian. Her need for Ellis was so literal. Sooner or later, he'd have to tell her. He said, Rudy told me the haul from the last pancake breakfast was $70. Rudy's wife would never answer as Dorian did. So we can send little extras to our boys on the front, gum and candy bars. Do you really think it matters? He was silent. He wouldn't goad her by saying he was sorry again. It was implacably truthful, her illness. They were still figuring out how to live against that and against all its concomitant damage. Her grief for her father gone down in scarlet, her lying and cheating husband seizing on the excuse of protecting her, her brother forcing on her what his feelings required. So much hurt it would have destroyed an ordinary marriage and might still destroy theirs. When he married her, Ellis had wanted a wife, unlike other wives. He'd wanted difficulties, wanted to test his mettle against some measure of exceptional. This was the exceptional he'd been given.